And bad news. Trump is doing that right now. The good news, new poll in the must-win state of Florida has him up for the first time in weeks. The Bloomberg Politics poll shows Trump leading Hillary Clinton in the state. You see it right there, 2 points. Margin of error makes it tight, but it's still good news. Now, what does that say about what's working for him there and not working in a place that's on your screen right now? North Carolina. Clinton up by 7. Unusual for the Democrat to be ahead in North Carolina, which we're about to discuss with our next guest from the Tar Heel state, Republican Congresswoman, Donald Trump supporter, Representative Renee Ellmers. Congresswoman, it's good to have you with us this morning. What is working in Florida for Donald Trump?
Well, he's there in Florida right now, and I think there are a number of things that he is focusing on that Floridians want to hear about that, quite frankly, Hillary Clinton is bringing absolutely no enthusiasm to. You know, her message of, you know, increasing taxes and moving forward with basically what we've had for 8 years under Barack Obama just isn't doing it. And Donald Trump is out there talking about the issues that matter, making sure America is safe, making sure our borders are secure, making sure that we're fighting ISIS and doing what we need to do to support our military and veterans. You know, Obamacare, this is a huge issue right now. As you know, people across this country are finding out what their premiums are going to be increased to in 2017. And quite frankly, Hillary Clinton's plan, which of course it was Hillary Clinton's health care before it was Barack Obama's, you know, basically she just is going to raise taxes and subsidize the insurance companies. I find it interesting when she talks about how Republicans want to replace it and just put insurance companies back, you know, in charge. That is not at all what Donald Trump has planned. Well, and in fact, it's one of those, you know, wink and a nod to the insurance companies. We're going to go after you.
Well, wink and a nod. That comes to the politicking of this. Donald Trump gets up there. He has his employees come out. He says, "Man, these people, they're really struggling under Obamacare." None of them are on Obamacare. The people who run his own facilities say 99% of his employees get insurance like half this country does through its employers. Did he just not know that, or does he not understand how his businesses are run?
I hear this every day. Thank goodness Donald Trump and his family and his business that they are able to provide health care other than the Affordable Care Act. Because if they did, he really would be in trouble.
Yeah, but
that
would
be a lot to have to explain.
He brought his employees out and said they're struggling under Obamacare. None of them are on it.
He loves to bring his employees out, by the way, because they love him. But the issue here is who's on Obamacare. I hear it every day.
Michael D'Antonio. Trump opens up about what drives him. That biographer will join us in a moment. But first, our Kyung La has highlights from these tapes.
You vote for her, you're crazy, okay? I'll tell you. She is the worst.
It's a Donald Trump we don't often see. Not campaigning, but instead contemplative. Like when he talks about how he won't accept losing.
You can be tough and ruthless and all that stuff, and if you lose a lot, nobody's going to follow you because you looked at it as a loser. Winning is a very important thing, and the most important aspect of leadership is winning. If you have a record of winning, people are going to follow you.
As we've seen this election, this is a leader who enjoys a fight.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
And the tapes reveal that willingness to fight began as a child.
In 8th grade.
I love to fight. I always love to fight.
Physical fights.
Yeah, all kinds of fights. Physical,
arguments.
All types of fights. Any kind of fight I loved it, including physical.
Ex-wife Ivana Trump also sat down for a rare interview. Ivana explained how 6 months into the relationship, she saw how Trump reacted when she out-skied him.
And then ski instructor, I told him, don't tell Don that I can ski, okay? Because his ego is so big, he's not ever going to ski. I went up, I went 2 flips up in the air, 2 flips back in the air, in front of me, I disappeared. Donald was so angry. He took off his skis, his ski boots, and walked up to the restaurant.
So he left you?
Yeah.
Wow.
He couldn't take it. He couldn't take it. He went foot bare up to the restaurant. He said, I'm not going to do this. for anybody, including Ivana.
Oh,
No,
gee.
he could not take it. That I could do something better than he did.
For Trump, everything is a competition, especially business.
I never had a failure because I always turned a failure into a success.
The theme weaves through his interviews, refusal to acknowledge any business failures.
I bought something, I throw it into a bankruptcy. I made an unbelievable deal, wiped out a lot of the debt. Like, came back, next day I read story, Trump files bankruptcy. I get all these people that don't understand business saying, oh, did you go bankrupt?
So,
Do you understand
but
that?
you talk about this a lot,
I do. I always
right?
do. Because I'll tell you why I do. What always bothers me is false stuff, untruths. That bothers me.
But what doesn't bother him? Fame. Trump admits he needs it.
It's happened from the time I was fairly young. It just happened.
Did it unnerve you at first?
No.
Or make you feel unsafe?
No. I think what would unnerve me if it didn't happen.
Trump says he doesn't see much need for reflection, but takes a moment to talk about marriage.
When you think about balancing your ambition and your relationships with the people you love, what's changed over the years?
Well, it's very hard for somebody to be married to me.
Ex-wife Ivana, in her interview, says what ended theirs after 3 children with him, Trump's affair with Marla Maples.
She's a stupid girl. She doesn't have a brains. I have no idea what Donald was doing with her. But she broke us of marriage because immediately when I find out his affair, I filed for divorce.
This is it.
I was the one, yeah. Because if you cannot trust your spouse, well, it's over.
Trump upended the presidential election with much more than fiery rhetoric. The interviews show he did it with a singular, unyielding belief in himself.
The most important thing is being able to have the proper vision and then never quitting. You know, a lot of people say, oh, you can never give up. Well, you can give up if you have a stupid vision. So I always say vision is the most important thing. You need the proper vision, and then you have to have the ability to get it done.
Kyung La, CNN, Los Angeles.
All right, we have a lot to talk about, so let's bring in Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Michael D'Antonio. He's the author of The Truth About Trump. He's the one who you hear on those audio tapes. Also with us is New York Times national political reporter Michael Barbaro, who obtained the tapes from D'Antonio. Great to have you both with us. Okay, so why, Michael, did you release these tapes now after this was done in 2014? Why now?
Well, I considered them supporting material for the book. It's almost as if I would give someone the documents I use, which I would do. It's all part of the record. So Michael asked me, and I just said yes. And what the funny thing is, if anyone else had asked, I probably would have said yes to them too.
Oh, we should have thought of that.
I did. He's lying. Let me ask you something, Michael. Why did you want them? What do you see the value as?
It always occurred to me that you could get a more poignant and candid Donald Trump if he weren't on stage and if he were prodded sufficiently by a skilled interviewer. And when Michael had told me that the interviews were voluminous, I mean hours and hours of conversations, I wondered what would have happened by the end of those conversations if you would have seen, the facade fall and Trump would have opened up a bit. And as it happens, he did. I mean, by the end of these interviews, you hear him talking about how vital a force public affirmation and adoration is. That's not something you normally hear. You hear this kind of performer, Donald Trump, not the more vulnerable one who is kind of searching his soul a little bit for a sense of who he is.
So, Michael, when the facade falls there and you hear that's your 4th sit-down interview with him, what do you think was most revealing in sitting down with him from all the time you've spent with him?
Well, I think it was this comment about how he doesn't like to analyze himself because he's kind of afraid of what he had realized. I was actually quite moved by him near the end of this process. He would be the guy that the public should see, actually. It's a calmer, more sincere, reflective person, and I would hope for some of those qualities in a president. But he, in public, only has one speed, and it's that bombast and aggression. And it's funny, I like him when he's quieter like that. You can almost get attached to him, but the other fellow is hard to grasp.
Well, it's interesting. A long time political kind of doctor for candidates said to me, Trump's biggest problem is he's only got one tool. That he's very good at the counterattack and going all in, but it doesn't work equally well in all circumstances. And in some of these interviews, you see where that comes from.
Yeah.
What do you get from that?
His childhood. I mean, and Michael can speak to this even more than I can, but he was sent off at the age of 13 to a military academy, which was not just a really disciplined place where you had to shine your belts and your shoes, but where combat was a part of life. And you had to be the best, in part by kind of making sure no one else who could compete with you, and you push them down. And he talks in these interviews about loving the fight, not tolerating the fight or just grudgingly participating. He lusted for the opportunity to fight, and that began at that age of his life, and it has continued on. And I think the other thing we learn about him is that he fears most profoundly losing that kind of a fight and being embarrassed in public. And throughout the interviews, you see him dumping and being incredibly contemptuous of anybody else who falls from grace, who's embarrassed, who loses their status. And it became very clear to me, reading these interviews and listening to them, that one of Donald Trump's greatest animating fears is that he will be publicly embarrassed, he will be humiliated, he will be forgotten. And I think that's a really fascinating lesson when you think about what makes him act the way he does, seek the public affirmation, go out and run for president, be a celebrity, and be a reality TV star.
So, Michael, what does that mean for November 9th? If he were to lose, then what happens to Trump?
I think it would be very difficult for him personally. I would expect him to retreat, but only briefly. As Michael said, he loves this fighting, and I realize that he feels secure fighting. It's when the fight is not happening that he's worried about what might come next. And that's unusual. Most of us don't want to jump into conflict and would rather,
But it's not unusual for the species that we're discussing, right? Candidates are different, especially, and candidates for president are way different than anybody else. You are going into a crucible that is different than anything else, and you have to want it more than you want anything else in your life. For all they talk about their families, this is the main child that they must covet. So is he that different in terms of the makeup of this typical species?
Well, I think it's just more extreme. He admires Bill Clinton. That's a good example. And
we have that. Actually, let me pause you for one moment, because it's interesting to hear him talk so glowingly about Bill Clinton.
Back then.
Back then. Listen to this.
Bill Clinton is certainly a great politician. And you should call Bill Clinton and ask him about me. He was on Larry King, or the other. He said Donald Trump is a great golfer, and he's a friend of mine. And now of course now it's a little different because a lot of people want me to run, and his wife is obviously going to be running. She's healthy.
Careful.
But you could ask him maybe. I mean, he may say something interesting. No, but he's a great politician.
How times have changed.
Well, and Bill was the guy who could bite his lip and feel your pain and would actually sit next to Hillary during the scandals and respond in a way that made us feel for him.
And you're saying that Donald Trump responded to that? He liked that about him?
No, that's the part that Donald can't do. So you see this whole thing of, I'm going to grab them by the you-know-what. Some other people would say, okay, I'm going to just lay myself open to this question and let Chris interview me and get it all out. Donald is attack, 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 and he's not going to give us that part of him.
But the other thing about that moment, and it happens throughout the interviews, is he's telling you, call this person, call Don King, call Bill Clinton. They will tell you essentially how great I am. And that's not the normal way of an interview with a politician. Call Chris, call Michael. They'll tell you how wonderful I am. And he needs the world to know. He's offering you the crumb trail to the person who's going to tell you the thing he most wants to read in the book, in the story.
As you learned very well, Michael, and you relayed well, he is a master of the sell. From telling you who to talk to how he sees himself. Even in interviews, he would often say, Allison, I'm right about this. Here it is.
Right.
He's great at the sell. We'll see how great on November 8th.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks for sharing the tapes with us as well.
The Obama administration adamantly defending the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. Why? Because premiums are going up in a big way. What can you expect? We'll give you the real numbers, stripped to the politics, with the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Next.